The Mendon-Honeoye Falls-Lima Sentinel welcomes you to this edition of the Mayor's and Supervisors Weekly Update, brought to you by...
Each week, our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard.
The Mendon-Honeoye Falls-Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history.
Hey, welcome everyone to this week's rendition of the Mayor's and Supervisors Update. I'm Chris Carosa, publisher of the Mendon-Honeoye Falls-Lima Sentinel, and each week we bring you the goings-on in the towns and villages that we cover. This week we'll be starting with Mike Falk in the town of Lima. How are we doing in Lima, Mike?
Things here are well, Chris. Thanks for hosting us all again. On February 1st, we are having a giant public information session over at the Elam Life Church at 6 p.m. This is to discuss the proposed water district outside of the village. If you live outside the village and you do not have public water, this affects you. If you live outside the village and you purchase water from the village, this affects you. It will contain a presentation by the town engineer, and then there will be a section to ask questions. The district formation process will be by petition, and the petitions will be available to sign at the event. We hope to see you there. The Livingston County Youth Bureau has opened nominations for the annual Teen Recognition Awards. Eligible youths must reside in Livingston County and be at least 15 years old by February 3rd, 23. They also have to be still in school, either homeschool or high school, and not graduated. Call 585-243-6909 for any other details. Nominations are due into the Youth Bureau by February 3rd. Livingston County Economic Development is gearing up for another round of the Dream-of-8 competition. This is the competition where people who are prospective business owners come in with their business plans and their ideas, go through a series of seminars and trainings, get graded, and are competing for cash prizes. The funding for this next round is $500,000 that's come from Senator Schumer's office. So it is a competition if you want to open a business in Livingston County. If you're curious, contact Livingston County Economic Development at 585-243-7124. That's all I've got, Chris.
All right, thanks, Mike. Rick, Village of Honeoye Falls, how are we doing there?
Well, we're doing good, Chris. Again, as Mike just said, thanks for hosting. It's always a pleasure, and sorry I'm on the road again, but that's the way it is. You know, in the village, things are going pretty well. We've had, as most of us around the Monroe County area, we've had very light or little plowing and salting this year so far, which has been kind of nice for our crews. You know, but at the same time, when we're doing our budgets, we have to commit to so much salt purchasing each year. And, you know, actually, we'd kind of like to use some of it up, I think, if we're going to be spending it. We don't have a lot of storage space, and to pay someone to store it for us for a period of time would be a challenge. Sorry about that. But it is a good problem to have. We have not had the issues, obviously, like Buffalo, and you know, we're lucky from that standpoint. But we do know the weather's coming, and probably by the end of February, we'll use up a lot of that budget anyway. The Wolfsburger Park project continues to go well. The developers will be coming back to the village, to our ZBA planning board group for phase 2 and 2A in the upcoming month. You know, their development and the project is going well, but they need to start looking at phase 2 of the 3-phase project so they can start on some of that process as well. Seneca Place, that development is about completed, and they should be coming in for their final approvals, and that has gone well. The village budget process, of course, we're on a different calendar year than most of the towns. And we're just starting our budget process for 23-24 now, but we're getting into that pretty heavily. Village elections, we're kind of excited about this. Village elections in March, we actually have three trustees positions up. We have a 2-year term, which is the continuation of the term that was vacated by Sherry Statler when she moved. Although we did appoint another person to fill that spot, that could only be temporary, so we have to elect someone for the final 2 years of that position. And then we have 2 4-year positions up. I've been really lucky to have a fantastic village board. We have a great group of people, but I am excited that we have 3 residents that have stepped up, I believe. They're going through the process of getting their paperwork squared away, but I believe we have 3 people outside of our village board members who will be running for some of these positions. And the thing that is really exciting about that is, like everybody else, we don't have a lot of volunteers stepping up for some of our committees and et cetera. And we all need people to step up. It's difficult, when you're low on volunteers. So this is good for us to have some people interested. And for those who may not be elected, we hope they'll be willing to serve on another committee. So we're excited about that. Lastly, in the village, I know Supervisor Moffett, and he's talked about this a few times. He started a fire services committee a few months ago, and that committee is doing a fantastic job. Kudos to Supervisor Moffett and that whole committee. We're excited to see where that all goes. But, I think one thing that the village and the town, and probably all of us, have to do a little bit better, I think, is we do give those kudos to those volunteers who step up, and they deserve all the praise we give them. But we need more. When you look at our emergency services, whether it be fire or EMS or whatever, or even some of our committees, we don't have a lot of volunteers stepping up, and we really need that, because when we have a big call, a big fire call, we get a lot of people showing up. But my concern is it's those smaller calls that only 1 or 2 people respond to, and that's when something can really go awry and we don't have enough people. So we need our residents to understand that we're in pretty dire straits when it comes to a lot of volunteers showing up for these fire calls and ambulance calls. And I think we need to get that information out. So we've got a lot going on with that. And again, as I said, kudos to Supervisor Moffett and that group, because it's very important that we plan for the future. From a county standpoint, always busy as usual. The new redistricting maps were finally signed into law. My district, District 5, has some minor changes, but I've also picked up some area in Parrington, the Bushnells Basin area. So that's exciting for me. I look forward to continuing serving and going through that campaign process. And now that the redistricting's done, all the legislators have to run for re-election this year. So we'll all be out there again. But I'm looking forward to continuing serving all of the residents in the 5th Legislative District. The other thing that was kind of important this week was the new tax changes through Monroe County, property tax, et cetera. So I think most people should have seen and heard that the 4% portion of the sales tax on clothing and footwear, anything that's $110 or less, the 4% of the Monroe County sales tax has been eliminated. So we'll be saving a little bit there, which is nice. And then the real property tax, the income levels have been changed. So if you're 65 and over, where I believe the number was $26,000 prior on income tax, anything over that, you did not get any kind of discount. That has now been moved up to $50,000. And also for those with disabilities or limited incomes, those numbers have gone up as well. And as all those things are finalized, I'll make sure the Sentinel and any of our residents who need that information have that. But that is going to be some nice savings, I think, for our residents as well. So we're excited about that. With that, I'll end. And again, thanks for the opportunity, Chris.
All right, Rick, one quick follow-up on the 4% waiver for clothing under $110. Is that total purchase or is that per item, that 110 cap?
That's per item. So if you, that's per item. So if you, shoes as an example, if you bought 2 pair of shoes, both pairs, if they were under the $110, it would be the discount on all of that. So all of your clothes purchases, et cetera. It's not just the, it's not just one item. It's each item.
All right, well, that certainly is good news. Let's move on over to John Moffett, Town of Mendon. What's moving in Mendon, John?
Hi, Chris. As always, thanks for having me. Couple of local things is we have a home that is on Route 64 in the hamlet of Mendon. If you've been by there, you've seen a large piece of equipment that is scheduled for demolition, and they have received a demolition permit. That piece of property was purchased by the neighboring property, which is the Crosby's gas station. As far as any future plans, they have not been in to discuss those with that additional piece of property at this point. Also, the former Clemenza's Pizza has received their special use permit, and they are proceeding with various inspections to get open and get started in business. Always glad to see another business in the hamlet. The former Chinese restaurant in the hamlet has changed owners several times very recently. The new owner is working on a business plan, and we look forward to seeing that proceed as well. For those of you who have paid attention to the governor's State of the State speech earlier this week, several of the things that she mentioned, the ones that jumps out at me is the one regarding zoning and the possibility of the state taking over some type of control of local zoning, which of course I feel that the towns, villages should be against, because I think we want to control our own communities through home rule and our local zoning. What works for zoning downstate doesn't necessarily work upstate. So that is a concern of mine, and hopefully a concern of yours. You will continue to monitor that situation. Locally in the town of Mendon, we have 4 new dwellings in 2022. Relatively small town, so we certainly appreciate a little bit of growth. We had 115 permits that were issued and 165 certificates of occupancies that were issued by our building department. Of course, permits could be anything from a shed to a house. So we do see a little moderate growth at times. Lastly, I want to mention, not one of the last things to mention, RG&E will be through this summer replacing a lot of the street lights in the hamlet. So we're looking forward to that. They'll be replacing them with LED lights, and we should see some energy savings and hopefully some improved lighting. And lastly, the weather issue. Yes, as some of my fellow supervisors and mayors have mentioned earlier in this broadcast, we have seen some pretty mild weather here, that we're almost in the middle of January. Not a lot of plowing, not a lot of salting. The town of Mendon did build a salt barn a few years ago. One of the reasons we built it was for seasons like this, because if we didn't have that, we would be paying to store that salt down at the salt mines, and we would be paying more per ton for it and a storage fee. And that's why we build it. And I think long-term, it'll be a savings to our taxpayers. Right now, it's pretty full, as you can imagine. But as some of my other elected officials mentioned earlier, it won't take only but a storm or two to put a pretty big dent of the salt that's in that salt barn. So budgeting wise, yes, we are not spending what we normally spend in overtime for the highway employees. However, we know that as well can turn around very, very quickly. We've all seen storms well into March, even April. I do remember back a couple of years ago when we were handing out some COVID-related items to our residents on May 11th. We were at the Mendon Firehouse in the parking lot, and it was snowing. So, never say never. Thanks for having me, and Happy New Year to everybody.
All right. Thanks, John. Steve Schultz, Henrietta, what's happening in Henrietta?
We got our bid responses back for the first 3 packages for our new town court. So that's underway. First up is demolition and site, then foundations and steel. So that should be underway soon. We actually have an auction going on for any of the shelving and desks and furniture left in the old library. Diggingfordeals.com, just search for Henrietta and it'll come up. So that's we decided to use that company to, as other supervisors know, we're required to sell things at market value or declare them zero. So we figured, hey, if we can get any money for them, that would be great. So we also got our bid response back for the Middle Road water main project. So there's an area that still has about I think it's 9 residential homes, but that area had been rezoned industrial, but they were all on wells. So that's not a good situation. So we're using some of the ARPA money for infrastructure improvements there. So we'll be creating a new water district soon, but we've already got the bid in and should be getting pipes ordered. The good news is all of those came under budget. Now, granted, the budgets were also set high because of the recent significant prices in steel and other materials. So as those have started to level off or come down, plus now is the time to go out to bid because contractors don't have a full schedule yet, so they're more aggressive in their pricing. So that's all been good news. On the sad news side, we're saddened to learn of a multiple homicide that took place in Henrietta. First and foremost, our thoughts and prayers are with the one surviving victim who's fighting for their life at the hospital. Our sympathies go out to the victims and their friends and families. And of course, we are relieved that the assailant is in custody. This was an isolated incident. The victims were all related to the assailant. Unfortunately, mental issues are involved as well as potentially some substance. But we'll defer any and all questions to the Monroe County Sheriff, who is handling the call. But very sad. The 2 individuals who were killed were, great members of that neighborhood and that community. So very sad to learn of that. We, in terms of the weather, it's been, we do have the salt barn, so the impact on salt isn't that big a deal. We almost always have to replenish our salt at some time through the year. So if we don't have to replenish it this year, that would be great. What it has allowed is we were behind on some projects. We recently built, our garage was overcrowded and we couldn't keep both flush trucks inside the garage. And so that meant every winter we would go to half of our capacity for flushing storm sewers and sanitary sewers. So we embarked on building a new garage to house our sewer and drainage department vehicles. So that's nearing completion, but there was a lot of work in the parking lot that we had our crews doing so as to save taxpayer money. And the nice thing is they've been able to catch up on any they were behind and even get ahead on some of that thanks to the weather. So, you know, that's been very convenient in that regards. But I agree, you know, as far as the impact on the budget, you know, one storm like what not even half of what Buffalo saw, and you're going to see those December savings disappear. The going back to the volunteers, as was mentioned earlier, you know, the town to support the volunteers, there was the amount for the well, first the seniors and the and for people with disabilities, the town of Henrietta also opted into those higher amounts for the tax exemptions. So we've been having a series of informational sessions for seniors. Obviously, for those who are already getting discounts, depending on where their income was, it moves them to a higher percentage of exemption. But there were also a number of people who didn't used to qualify for the exemption. So we wanted to make sure that those individuals knew to get in here and get registered for the exemption. So we had sent something out. And again, we've been having sessions at our senior center to try to educate them. And then also, like the county, we did adopt back last year the exemption for volunteer firefighters and volunteer EMTs, emergency respondents, because, you know, one of the things, I mean, you're seeing the outrage, I think it was in Gates, regarding the significant increases in fire district taxes. You know, continued volunteer participation helps keep those taxes down. But we feel that, hey, if we're all benefiting from these volunteers essentially putting their lives on the line for our benefits, that we should reward them in a way, and that's through that property tax exemption. So the county adopted it as well, and so has the town of Henrietta. I know a number of other towns have as well. So and then, you know, project wise, we have a lot of projects going on. One of those that has just made a significant step forward, the URMC Orthopedic Center at Marketplace Mall did get its Department of Health approval. So they are now open and taking patients there. They have not had a grand opening yet. They're going to wait till the weather's nicer to do that, but they've had we'll call it a soft opening, and like I said, they've been taking patients. The 4-story tower that's being built in addition, that is expected to open this fall as well. So that's helping revitalize the mall. In addition to that, we now have a senior apartment complex going up, and it's involved in a state program that will help keep the costs down, so it'll be affordable senior housing. And as the Marketplace Mall is a hub for bus service, it also, for those who no longer drive, it enables them to be able to use the bus and other public transportation. And then in addition, if you haven't been by there in a while, you might notice the Macy's is now gone. A company, Floor & Decor, bought essentially that. Well, I think they're leasing, because I don't think they sell, but they leasing that area. They knocked down the former Macy's building and they're putting up a new building in its stead. So like I said, the Macy's is down, and we should probably see the construction coming along soon. But a lot of other projects going on. Most of them are in places, you know, we put in incentive zoning and other benefits to try to get reuse of dormant buildings rather than building in, you know, currently green spaces. So we're seeing a lot of restaurants being reused, recycled, sometimes in the same building, sometimes knocking down the building and replacing it. That happened with the old Macaroni Grills of BJ's restaurants coming in its place. We've got a potential tenant coming into the old Denny's restaurant. They have not made their name public yet, but a lot of redevelopment going on to fill in these formerly empty buildings. So that's exciting. So, and then finally Tuesday we close on a new town park. So 2 residents in Henrietta, Ann Stevens and Bill Shattuck, they approached the town about a year ago with the idea that they would buy the corner property that used to be Chapman Hotel, historic hotel. More recently, people would know it as Three Sisters Ice Cream. And but that was also empty and falling into disrepair. So they purchased the land. They revitalized the former Three Sisters ice cream stand to turn it into a historic kiosk. There's going to be a bunch of information about the historic West Henrietta Hamlet. There's going to be a fountain and some other stuff in the park. And then they've been doing all those improvements. We're going to buy the property for what they originally paid for it. And essentially they're donating all those improvements. So it's great, grassroots effort. And we're very excited about that. Well, I'm also talking about parks. I'll also mention, if I haven't mentioned before, we're working with Monroe County. I had pointed out to Adam Bello that Henrietta does not have a county park. And he was a bit surprised to learn that. And so we had discussions with the parks. We had acquired some land through our in our south of the thruway, we have very low density. And so to get enough density for people to build houses, they typically have to preserve land. And one way to do that is to donate it to the town. And it's land that straddles the Lehigh Valley Trail. So we're going to build a looping trail system. We're working with the county. It's going to be an interesting partnership, intermunicipal partnership, because when we were talking with them, the park was having concerns about their ability to get out there and mow and clean. And I said, well, the town has the ability to do that. What we don't have is the resources, the capital resources to build the new park facility. So it's going to be a county. We're basically going to turn the land over to the county. Well, I guess we'll sell it to them for $1. So it'll become county land. They'll build the facilities, but we'll have an intermunicipal agreement where we will mow and clean. There's not going to be a ton of mowing because it's going to be more of again, hiking trails in and through the area, including past wetlands. That there's a study going on by a number of RIT students. An interesting phenomena is occurring in that as the ash trees have died, the cedar trees, which used to predominate that swamp, are starting to actually return. So they've been studying that to watch and to study as the, essentially as the species, as the flora starts to change over. So that's going to be interesting, but it's a nice trail. For those familiar with the old Doc Burns properties, some of those trails he had already built. So we're going to continue those trails, extend them up to this new area off of Ward Hill, and build a bunch of loop backs. So that's an exciting project. And we'll have our first county park in Henrietta. So a lot of excitement there.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Anybody else have anything that they want to add? Seeing none, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for watching. Remember, this airs every Sunday at 1:00 on our Facebook page. If you like the Facebook page, you will be notified when it airs. Similarly, if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, also Sunday at 1:00, you'll be notified when it airs there too. That's all for this week. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye for now.
Imagine yourself communicating with a difference. Pan-Dimensional Solutions helps you do this. Whether live spectator events, taped broadcasts, or real-time audience-engaging programs, you can benefit immediately from the tools Pan-Dimensional Solutions will share with you. Do you want to make a difference? Contact us at pandimensional.com.